In just 7 hours, the streets of Ouagadougou turned into a battlefield of justice, and 3 powerful ministers found themselves behind bars, caught in the crossfire of a war they never thought would come home. It began like any other dusty morning in Ouagadougou. The sun rose over the Sahel with quiet intensity, casting long shadows across the presidential compound. But inside the halls of power, silence had been replaced by whispers, rumors that President Ibrahim Traoré was about to do something drastic. For weeks, intelligence officers had been intercepting encrypted transmissions between known drug cartels and high-level government officials. Cargo planes carrying aid had been landing with hollow crates, while border outposts reported an increase in activity. Trucks with diplomatic plates, patrols that were told to look the other way, and unexplained cash transfers through shell corporations. To many Burkinabe citizens, the corruption was a fact of life, a rumor never proven, a crime never punished. But for Traoré, it had reached the breaking point. He hadn't slept for 3 nights, locked in the Situation Room with his most trusted allies, none of them elected officials. On a dusty wall map of the country, red pins marked cartel routes. Black lines traced money trails that led, with chilling consistency, back to 3 familiar names in his own cabinet. They were men who had once stood beside him during the revolution, now living behind high walls and speaking in boardrooms rather than on the streets. One was the Minister of Infrastructure, Cabaret Diallo, nicknamed the engineer not for his technical skills but for his intricate schemes. Another, Dr. Samuel Tambora, the Minister of Health, had turned foreign medical shipments into a disguise for chemical drug imports. The third, Colonel Issouf Ndiaye, was now Chief of Border Security, a former war hero turned shadow broker. At precisely 5 a.m., President Traoré summoned the national broadcast station. Cameras rolled live as he stepped into the cold morning air, wearing his full military uniform, cap in hand. His voice was calm, but what he said sent shockwaves across the nation. Today, I declare war, not on a foreign army, but on a cancer within our bones. The drug lords of this continent do not only hide in jungles and deserts. They sit in offices. They shake our hands. They wear our flag. That ends now. The camera panned in as he placed a cap on his head and walked off without taking questions. By 5:15 a.m., social media exploded. By 6 a.m., the streets of Ouagadougou buzzed with sirens. And by 6:48 a.m., the first arrest was made. Cabaret Diallo's convoy never made it past the city's outer ring road. He was in his armored SUV when 6 matte black tactical vehicles boxed him in near the old train depot. Traffic came to a halt. Pedestrians scattered. What was once a silent route to a fake infrastructure meeting turned into a front-row spectacle. The doors were ripped open, and masked operatives from a newly formed anti-corruption tactical unit dragged him out without ceremony. In his pocket was a diplomatic passport and a flash drive encrypted with cartel payment logs. As they pulled him away, he kept shouting the same sentence, "You have no idea what you're doing." But the country was already watching. They did know, and they'd had enough. By 7:15 a.m., the second arrest shook the diplomatic community. Dr. Samuel Tambora was pulled from a luxury countryside villa north of Lumbila. He had been scheduled to attend a health summit in Geneva, where he would speak on transparency in medical logistics. Instead, he was found hiding behind a false wall in his private study, alongside a suitcase containing $1.6 million in foreign currency, 2 burner phones, and pharmaceutical shipment codes linked to underground labs in West Africa. The footage was leaked intentionally. It showed a man once praised for bringing modern health infrastructure to rural villages, now begging not to be exposed, claiming he did it for the system. But no one bought it. The nurses and doctors he had underpaid for years flooded social media, exposing the reality behind his carefully crafted image. One post read, "He let our children die while he bought more champagne." The most dangerous takedown came at 10 a.m. Colonel Issouf Ndiaye was a lion in the old regime, a man who once led troops against terror cells in the north. But power had changed him. At his military compound near the Mali border, he kept a small private army loyal to him, not the flag. Traoré's team couldn't risk a direct confrontation. Instead, they used a ghost protocol, an internal betrayal. One of Ndiaye's own men turned against him. disabling the compound's internal security systems just long enough for 6 stealth units to breach the perimeter. No bullets were fired. When they entered his office, the colonel was sitting at his desk, smoking a cigar, eyes fixed on the live television coverage of the earlier arrests. "I knew you'd come," he said quietly, "but I didn't think you'd be brave enough to finish what you started." By noon, the country had split into 2 emotions, shock and celebration. Markets closed early. Thousands gathered in Freedom Square. Children painted signs with Traoré's face beside a lion. The people had always wanted justice, but they had never imagined it would come this fast, this public, or this bold. In less than 7 hours, the face of Burkina Faso's power had changed. Rumors swirled that more arrests were coming. A leaked list titled Phase 2 began circulating on encrypted apps, allegedly naming over a dozen more officials and international agents complicit in the drug trade. Meanwhile, regional leaders stayed silent. Some were nervous. Others were furious. But no one dared speak against Traoré. Not while the entire African youth watched him as a symbol of rebellion finally made real. That evening, Traoré gave a second address, this time not on national TV, but in the open square. No teleprompter, no stage, just him surrounded by the people. He spoke not as a president, but as a soldier and son of the soil. "We were told Africa could not clean itself, that our blood was too mixed with greed. But look around. What do you see? You see courage. You see truth. And if we fall tomorrow, at least we'll fall clean." His words sent chills through the air. Elders wept. Youths roared. And in a surprising turn, mothers from cartel-ridden villages began coming forward with testimonies, videos, messages, names of smugglers, many protected by the very officials now in custody. A national purge had begun, not of vengeance, but of rebirth. The following morning, newspapers across the continent carried one headline: Africa's youngest leader declares war and wins round 1. But this wasn't just a round. It was a revolution. And while enemies plotted in the dark, the people of Burkina Faso lit fires of hope that wouldn't be extinguished easily. If you believe in stories that speak truth to power, justice over fear, and leadership that puts people first, subscribe to our channel for more gripping narratives from the heart of Africa's fight for dignity.